The sharp cry of her son cut through the noise of the emergency room, louder to her ears than the clatter of gurneys, the hurried conversations of nurses, or the distant beeping of monitors. Lisa tightened her grip on Ben's small hand as they pushed through the sliding glass doors of St. Vincent Hospital. His face was pale, streaked with tears, his left arm held awkwardly against his body as though even the slightest movement might break him in half. She bent down, trying to steady her voice, though her own chest trembled. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart," she whispered, brushing a strand of damp hair from his forehead. "The doctor will make it better. Just a little longer." Ben nodded weakly, his lips pressed tight to hold back another sob. He was always so brave, even for a 5-year-old. That made her both proud and terrified, because she knew he had learned that strength from her, from years of watching her carry the weight of the world alone. Lisa strode to the reception desk, trying not to let the rising panic show on her face. She had been through worse, long nights without sleep, months of stretching paychecks until they nearly tore, moments when she wasn't sure how she'd keep their little apartment warm through the winter. But this was different. This was her son in pain that she couldn't endure. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman with half-moon glasses, didn't even glance up right away.
"Name?"
she asked, her tone brisk, all business.
"Benjamin Martinez,"
Lisa said quickly.
"He fell at the school playground. His arm. It might be broken."
The woman typed without emotion, then slid a clipboard toward her.
"Fill these out. You'll be seen shortly."
Lisa bit back the urge to snap that shortly wasn't good enough. Instead, she took the papers with one hand while keeping Ben pressed close with the other. Her fingers trembled as she scribbled down his information. Maybe it was adrenaline, maybe exhaustion, but something about the moment felt strange, as though the very walls of the hospital held their breath. A heaviness pressed down on her, familiar yet unexplainable, a weight that seemed to whisper of something she didn't want to remember. When she returned the forms, the receptionist gave a short nod. "Room 3, down the hall to the right. Dr. Carter will see you in a few minutes." Lisa froze. The name dropped into her chest like a stone into deep water, rippling outward until it threatened to pull her under. She blinked, trying to steady herself, telling herself it was just a coincidence. Carter was common. Hundreds of doctors in the state, thousands across the country, but her knees weakened all the same. She squeezed Ben's hand tighter, forcing herself to keep walking down the corridor.
"Come on, baby,"
she murmured, her voice breaking slightly.
"Just a few more steps."
Each step felt heavier than the last. The sterile white walls blurred around her, the sharp scent of antiseptic biting at her throat. The closer they came to room 3, the stronger that strange energy grew, twisting inside her chest like a storm she couldn't stop. When they reached the door, Lisa took a breath so deep it hurt. She turned the handle and pushed it open. The man inside stood with his back to them, holding an X-ray against the fluorescent light. His dark hair was shorter than she remembered, though the rebellious curl at the nape of his neck still lingered. His broad shoulders filled the white coat with the same confident posture she had once loved and hated in equal measure. Time seemed to shatter into fragments as he slowly turned. Their eyes met, and in that instant, the last 5 years collapsed as though they had never existed. Landon Carter. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. The clipboard nearly slid from her hand. She had walked straight into the one place she had prayed she would never find herself again, and standing beside her, his tiny fingers curled into hers, was the son Landon didn't even know existed. Lisa felt the ground sway beneath her feet as Landon turned fully toward her, his eyes widening first in shock, then in something she could not yet name. Ben clung closer, hiding his face against her hip, his small body trembling. The room was filled with silence so loud it drowned out the beeping of the machines in the hallway. Lisa forced herself to breathe, forced her voice into the coldest tone she could manage. "Dr. Carter, this is my son Benjamin. He fell at the playground and hurt his arm." She said the name like it belonged to a stranger, not the man who once held her heart. Landon crouched slowly until he was level with Ben, his white coat rustling as he knelt. "Hello, champ," he said, his voice softer than Lisa remembered. "Can you tell me how you got hurt?" Ben peeked at his mother for permission before whispering, I tried to slide like Superman, but I fell. Landon smiled faintly. Superman gets hurt too sometimes, but he always gets better. The words made Lisa's chest ache because of how natural they sounded, like he had been speaking to his own child all along. Landon reached carefully for Ben's arm, his hands steady. Though Lisa noticed the tension in his jaw, each touch was clinical yet personal, his eyes flicking to Ben's face as if searching for answers hidden there. It might not be broken, Landon murmured more to himself than anyone, but we will take an X-ray to be sure. Ben's wide eyes lifted. Does an X-ray hurt? No, it is just a special picture, Landon said. Like looking inside you without any pain. Lisa could barely listen. Every word, every gesture clawed at the secret she had carried for years. She wanted to scream at him to demand why fate had decided to throw him back into her carefully built world. But instead she stood frozen, watching his every move, when the nurse arrived to take Ben for the X-ray. Lisa began to rise too, but Landon's voice stopped her. Lisa, can we talk after she has the exam? The way he said her name nearly undid her. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, and in every version she was strong in every version. She looked him in the eye and told him the truth, but here in the fluorescent light of room 3 with her son down the hall, she could only whisper, "There is nothing to talk about." Landon, please. The single word came rough and heavy, carrying 5 years of silence. She followed Ben down the hall, not daring to look back, but she could still feel Landon's eyes on her like a tether pulling her toward a storm she was not ready to face. When the nurse returned later with the results, Ben was swinging his legs happily, relieved it was only a bruise. Lisa wrapped a sling around his small arm, her hands steady but her heart pounding. Landon entered moments later, his gaze moving from Ben's innocent grin to her pale face. "So, Superman, you are safe," Landon said, forcing a smile. But Lisa saw the tremor in his hands. He looked at his son again, truly looked at him. And Lisa knew in that moment her secret was unraveling, and nothing in the world could stop it anymore. The silence in the room thickened as the nurse excused herself, leaving Lisa, Ben, and Landon together. Ben clutched his little red car in his good hand, happily distracted, but Landon's eyes never left the boy. Lisa could see the storm building inside him, every flicker of recognition, every detail that drew him closer to the truth. The curve of Ben's smile, the tilt of his head, the same restless energy she once saw in Landon himself. Landon cleared his throat, but his voice broke when he tried to speak. "Lisa." How long the words came out raw. His eyes locked on hers, refusing to let go. She shook her head, trying to steady her breathing. "You need to focus on your patient, nothing more," he repeated louder this time. "How long, Lisa?" The question rang through the sterile room. Ben looked up, confused, then went back to rolling his car across the exam table. His innocence, the only shield between two adults standing on the edge of a truth too heavy to contain. 5.5 years, Lisa whispered finally. The air left Landon's chest as if he had been struck. He stumbled back a step, his hand gripping the edge of the desk, his eyes wide. "My God," he managed the words, but they hung unfinished. Lisa closed her eyes, pain flooding her voice. "Yes, Ben is your son, Landon." The truth slammed into him harder than any blow he had ever taken. His knees bent slightly as though the weight of 5 stolen years was crushing him. He looked at Ben, who was now humming softly, completely unaware that his life had just changed forever. "Why didn't you tell me?" Landon's voice cracked with anger and despair. "I had the right to know." Lisa felt her hands shake, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. "You left. You said your career was more important than anything we had. You made it clear there was no room for complications." Landon's face twisted with regret and disbelief. "I never called you a complication. I was trying to build a future that did not include us." Lisa shot back, her voice low so Ben would not hear. "I was alone. Landon pregnant, scared, and you never came back, you never called. You left me with silence." Landon rubbed his hand over his face, tears threatening to spill. "I was an idiot. I was blind. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought love would wait, Lisa, but it did not. And now I see what I lost." Ben tapped his car against the table and looked up with a smile. "Dr. Carter, can I have another sticker?" Landon swallowed hard, crouching to his son's level again, his eyes burning as he looked at the boy. "Yes, champ, you can have as many as you want." Lisa's throat tightened as she watched them. She, knew what Landon saw now, the reflection of himself in Ben. The same spark, the same resilience, and once that connection had been made, there would be no undoing it. When Ben skipped out with the nurse moments later, Landon turned to Lisa, his voice trembling with fury and longing. "You cannot keep me away from him. Not now. Not ever again." Lisa's heart pounded against her ribs. She had protected Ben for years, but she felt the walls closing in. And with Landon standing there demanding his place, she knew her carefully guarded world was about to collapse in ways she could not control. The door closed softly behind Ben and the nurse, leaving Lisa and Landon alone together. The silence was heavy like a storm pressing against the windows. Lisa sat down in the chair, trying to keep her composure, but her hands betrayed her trembling. Landon stood across the room, gripping the edge of the desk, his knuckles white as if the only thing keeping him steady was the cold metal beneath his fingers. "You should have told me," he said finally, his voice raw, his eyes locked on hers. "I had the right to know, and I had the right to be loved." Lisa shot back, her words sharp, but her voice cracked with years of buried pain. "You think it was easy for me? You think I wanted to carry this secret alone? Landon, you made your choice. You walked away." Landon shook his head. "No, Lisa, I left because I thought it was temporary. I thought if I built a career first, if I proved myself, then I could come back to you. I was wrong. I see that now, but I never stopped caring. Caring." Lisa's laugh was bitter and hollow. "You cared about exams and rounds and hospital politics while I was waking up alone every night with a crying baby, while I was figuring out how to pay rent and buy diapers, while I was sitting in emergency rooms praying Ben's fever would break." Her words sliced through him, his chest heaved with guilt. "I should have been there," he whispered. "Red, I should have answered the calls. I should have fought harder for us." The memory flared in Lisa's mind, the unanswered phone calls, the moment she heard his voice on the line and he told her he was too busy to talk. The words still echoed after all these years. Complications, he had called them, even if not out loud. Lisa leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "I called you 3 times. Landon 3 times, and every time you pushed me away. So do not stand here and say you should have known you did not want to know." He turned away, covering his face with his hands, trying to steady the emotions that threatened to consume him. When he finally looked back, his eyes were wet with unshed tears. "Our son," he said hoarsely, the words catching in his throat. "Lisa, he is ours, not just yours. You cannot erase me from his life. He is my life." Lisa snapped. "I have been everything for him. Mother and father, I built this family with my own hands because you were not there, and now you come back and think you can just claim him like some forgotten prize." Landon stepped closer, his voice fierce and trembling. "I am not asking for a prize, I am asking for my son. I missed his first steps, his first words, his birthdays. I missed everything, and I will not miss another day." Lisa's breath caught in her throat because behind his anger she heard the truth, the desperation of a man realizing how much had been lost, but fear still held her tight. If she let him in, everything she had built could crumble before she could respond. The door opened and Ben ran back in, holding his coloring page proudly. "Look, Mommy, I made a doctor saving people," he said, his innocent eyes shining. Lisa forced a smile as her heart broke. Landon crouched beside Ben, taking the drawing into his trembling hands. "It is perfect, champ," he whispered, his voice breaking in ways Ben could not understand, but Lisa could, and she knew then the secret that had lived in shadows for years was out in the open, and nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed blurred together for Lisa. Though she tried to carry on with the rhythm of normal life, nothing felt normal anymore. Every time she tucked Ben into bed, every time she heard his laughter in the small apartment, she felt the weight of Landon's presence pressing at the edges of her carefully built walls. He had asked for her phone number under the guise of checking on Ben's recovery, but Lisa knew his intentions ran deeper. It started with a call. Late one evening, Landon's voice was hesitant, almost nervous. "Lisa, how is Ben doing better?" she answered cautiously. "His arm is healing quickly." Landon hesitated before speaking again. "I would like to see him not as a doctor, but as his father." Lisa's heart skipped a painful beat. She wanted to hang up. She wanted to protect the bubble of safety she had created for her son, but then Ben's voice floated from the living room. "Mommy, who is it? Is it Dr. Carter?" She felt herself break when Landon arrived the next afternoon. Ben ran to the door, his little feet pounding against the floor. "The doctor, who gave me the sticker," he shouted excitedly. Landon knelt in jeans and a navy shirt, his arms opening wide. "Hey, champ, how is the arm?" Ben grinned. "Better look." He stretched it carefully, proud of his progress. Lisa stood back watching them, her arms crossed, though her heart was unraveling. Landon pulled a bag from behind him. "I brought something for you, miniature cars, fire trucks, ambulances." Ben's eyes widened in awe for me, he whispered. "Of course," Landon said. "Heroes need their own fleet." Ben laughed and threw himself onto the carpet, tearing open the box. "Come play with me." Landon sat cross-legged on the floor, making siren noises, pretending to chase invisible villains. Ben squealed with laughter. Lisa stood in the doorway, torn between dread and wonder because it looked so natural. Too natural. As the afternoon passed, Landon answered Ben's endless questions with patience. How does the heart work? Why is the sky blue? Do doctors get scared? Sometimes Lisa watched every interaction, her chest aching. Ben had never connected so easily with anyone, not even teachers or neighbors. It was as if some hidden part of him had always been waiting for this. Then came the question Lisa feared the most. "Dr. Carter, do you have kids?" Landon froze for a fraction of a second, his eyes flickering toward Lisa before he answered, "No, but I always wished I had a son like you." Ben grinned. "Then we can be friends, and Mommy says friends are family too." Lisa had to turn away, her eyes filling with tears. The innocence of her child cut through every defense she had built. Landon's gaze followed her, his voice thick when he whispered to Ben, "I would be honored to be your friend." That evening, Ben tugged at Lisa's sleeve when Landon stood to leave. "Mommy, can he have dinner with us? Please?" Lisa hesitated. Landon waited silently, his eyes full of hope. Finally she sighed. "All right, but nothing special, just a simple meal," while Lisa cooked. Landon washed the dishes she used. They moved around each other like a dance long forgotten, yet instinctively remembered. Ben chattered happily at the table, oblivious to the tension between them when dinner was done and Ben begged for one last cartoon. They sat together on the couch, Ben nestled between them, slowly drifting to sleep. Lisa's heart ached watching her son curl against Landon as if he had been doing it his whole life. She wanted to scream at fate for being so cruel, and yet a whisper of something terrifying and beautiful stirred inside her. What if this was what they were meant to be all along? But even as she allowed herself that dangerous thought, Lisa knew storms never stayed away for long, and somewhere beyond the fragile warmth of her living room, someone else had already been. Egan plotting to tear it all apart, Caroline Whitmore sat at a candlelit restaurant table, her expression tight as she stirred her wine glass. She had been planning this evening for weeks, imagining Landon's attention fixed on her, but tonight his gaze was distant, his fork barely touching the expensive meal she had ordered for them. "Landon," she said, her voice sharp, "are you listening?" He blinked as if snapping back from somewhere else. "Sorry, what were you saying?" She narrowed her eyes. She had spent months weaving herself into his life, the perfect girlfriend, the director's daughter with connections, the respectable match. And now he was slipping away into silence and distraction. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it quickly, a softness flickering over his face before he turned it face down on the table. It was all the proof she needed. When dinner ended, Caroline's smile never reached her eyes inside her chest. A storm of jealousy raged. She already knew there was someone else, and when she followed him the next evening, she discovered exactly who Lisa Martinez. The name tasted sour on her tongue, a single mother with a small apartment and a child clinging to her side. Caroline's jaw tightened as she watched from across the street. Landon carried a bag of toys into the house and stayed there for hours. By the time she returned to her father's office, Caroline's plan had already taken shape. Dr. Whitmore glanced up from his paperwork when she entered late in the evening. "Caroline, what brings you here?" She laid a folder on his desk, her expression carefully composed. "I am worried about Landon, Father. He is involved with a woman who could damage his career." Her father frowned. "What kind of involvement?" Caroline slid documents across the desk, carefully curated records, financial struggles, multiple address changes, the kind of things that could paint a picture of instability and neglect. "And here is the most concerning detail," she added, her voice low and deliberate. "The boy was recently treated at our hospital for a suspicious injury. Her father's brows knit together. Are you suggesting neglect? I am suggesting we cannot risk scandal. She pressed her tone, dripping with concern. Landon is important to this hospital, but if he is tied to a woman like that with questionable stability and a child at risk, what do you think the board will say? Dr. Whitmore hesitated, the weight of his reputation heavy in his silence. If we ignore possible danger to a child and the media finds out, it could ruin everything. Caroline leaned forward. Exactly. Father, I think we should notify Child Protective Services quietly for the child's safety. Of course, by the following week, Lisa's world shattered when two strangers in suits knocked on her door. Ben had been waiting excitedly for Landon to visit, but instead he watched wide-eyed as officials entered the living room asking questions about his care, his home, his mother. Lisa's hands shook as she answered every accusation with desperation. He fell at the playground. She pleaded, I never neglected him. But the officials wrote notes, their faces stern. When they left, Lisa sank onto the floor, tears spilling as Ben came to her side. Mommy, did we do something wrong? She clutched him tightly. No, sweetheart, you did nothing wrong. But inside her chest, terror burned. Someone was trying to take her son from her. Someone powerful and cruel. And as the shadows grew longer outside her window, Lisa realized this was not a random act. It was a strike aimed directly at her family, and she feared it was only the beginning. The subpoena arrived on a gray morning, slid under the apartment door by a uniformed officer. Lisa's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. The words swam before her eyes. Mandatory appearance at Child Protective Services to answer allegations of neglect against minor Benjamin Martinez. Her stomach dropped. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting back the sobs that threatened to escape. Ben was at SCO. All laughing with friends, unaware that the fragile safety of his world was being torn apart. Lisa collapsed into the kitchen chair, clutching the paper, her vision blurring with tears. After 5 years of fighting through sleepless nights and sacrifices, she was being called a negligent mother. Her son was her life, and now someone wanted to rip him away. The phone rang. Landon's name flashing across the screen. Lisa almost let it ring, but then answered, her voice brittle. Lisa, I heard about the subpoena, his tone urgent, steady. I want to stand with you. I can testify. I am his father. I know you are a good mother. No, Lisa snapped, too sharp, too fast. Your presence will only make this worse. They are already questioning our relationship. If they see you with me, they will twist it against us. Our relationship? Landon repeated quietly, his voice carrying both anger and hurt. Is that what this is to you? Nothing more than a problem, Lisa. You know I am not leaving this alone. She hung up before he could continue, but the phone rang again and again until she silenced it. The sound of the empty apartment echoed louder than any call. That afternoon when Ben bounded through the door, his backpack bouncing his smile wide, Lisa tried to force normalcy, but his eyes were too sharp, too aware. Mommy, why are you sad? Did Dr. Carter not come today? He promised he would. Lisa's throat closed. She knelt to hold him close, her voice breaking. Sweetheart, Dr. Carter is busy. He will not be visiting anymore. Ben's small face crumpled with confusion, but he hugged her back, whispering, It is okay, Mommy. We still have each other. When he was asleep, Lisa spread papers across the kitchen table. School records, medical bills, photographs, receipts. Every proof of her devotion scattered like a desperate shield. She wrote a letter, pouring every ounce of her soul onto the page, defending herself against accusations she could barely understand. Across town, Landon paced his apartment sleepless, his mind burning with suspicion. The timing, the accusations, the sudden attack on Lisa and Ben. It could not be coincidence, and his thoughts circled back to Carolyn. The careful questions, the strange smiles, the way she had spoken about Lisa as if she were a danger. His phone buzzed. Caroline's voice sweet and calculated. Landon, you sound worried. Talk to me. Do you know anything about a report to Child Protective Services? His question cut sharp through the line. Silence stretched too long before she replied. Why would I know about that? Landon's chest tightened, his instincts screaming. Caroline, what did you do? Her tone slipped cold. I protected you from a woman trying to use her child to manipulate your life. His grip tightened around the phone. You filed the report. You tried to destroy her. You tried to destroy my son. Caroline's breath hissed across the line. Landon, you do not understand.
I did this for us.
But he ended the call slamming the phone onto the counter, rage and clarity crashing into him in one devastating wave. That night he sat at his kitchen table gathering every scrap of evidence, every recording, every email, every careless word Caroline had left behind. He was going to fight for Lisa and for Ben. He had already lost 5 years. He would not lose another moment, and if it cost him his career, his reputation, even his future, he no longer cared because family was all he had left to fight for. The sun had not yet risen when Landon pulled into the parking lot of Child Protective Services. His eyes were bloodshot from a night without sleep, the passenger seat beside him stacked with files, photos, and his phone loaded with recordings. Every piece of evidence he had scraped together during the long hours of darkness. This was no longer about protecting his career. It was about protecting Lisa and their son. Inside the building, the air smell of paper and disinfectant. A woman with tired eyes introduced herself as Dr. Santos, the social worker handling Lisa's case. She looked surprised when Landon presented his credentials and requested an urgent meeting. "Dr. Carter, I was not expecting you." He placed the folder on the table, his voice steady but fierce. "This is about Benjamin Martinez. You cannot move forward without hearing the truth." He began with the simplest words. "I am his biological father." Dr. Santos straightened in her chair, taking notes. Landon's voice cracked, but he continued. "Lisa raised him alone. Because I never knew. I never knew until last week when he came into the hospital with an injured arm. I examined him. Myself. He is loved, cared for, protected. Everything in the report you received is a lie." Dr. Santos frowned. "These are strong claims." Dr. Landon pressed the recorder on the table. Caroline's voice filled the room, calm and chilling. "I saved you from a situation that could destroy your career. That woman was using her son to manipulate you." Dr. Santos's pen paused in midair. Landon played the second recording. Caroline again, this time speaking to her father. "The documents are not technically false, just creatively interpreted." The room was silent except for the quiet hum of the recorder. Landon leaned forward, his voice breaking with emotion. "Lisa is not negligent. She is extraordinary. She sacrificed everything to give our son stability. She works from home, so she can always be there. She chooses a simpler life, so he never has to feel abandoned." He pushed forward the photos, snapshots of Ben playing in their living room, Lisa helping him with homework, the boy laughing, his face glowing with the joy of a child who knew he was safe. "Does this look like neglect?" Landon demanded. "Or does this look like love?" Dr. Santos studied the evidence, her expression shifting from suspicion to unease. "Doctor, these are serious accusations against Dr. Whitmore's daughter and against the hospital itself." Landon's eyes hardened. "I know, and I am willing to testify publicly even if it destroys my career. My son matters more than any position, any title." Hours later, Lisa sat at her kitchen table, her hands still trembling over the subpoena. When the phone rang, she almost did not answer, but then she heard Landon's voice. "Lisa, it is over. The case is dismissed." Her breath caught. "What do you mean Caroline fabricated everything?" "I proved it this morning. You are safe. Ben is safe." She pressed the phone to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Ben looked up from his crayons, confused. "Mommy, why are you crying?" She bent to kiss his head. "Nothing, sweetheart. We are okay. We are finally okay." But across the city in the tall glass hospital building, Caroline slammed her office door, her face twisted with fury, whispers already spreading through the halls. The perfect facade she had built was crumbling, her father's reputation collapsing with it. She stared at her reflection in the darkened window, her voice trembling with venom. "He thinks he won, but this is not over, not by a long shot." And as Lisa hung up the phone, relief flooding her chest, she did not yet realize the storm had only begun. The truth was out, but so were the enemies who had been exposed and desperate. Enemies were always the most dangerous. Lisa sat on the couch watching Ben carefully arrange his dinosaur figures on the rug. The sunlight from the window painted him in gold. His laughter filled the small apartment, yet her chest was still heavy with the echoes of the past week. The relief of the case being dismissed had not fully settled. Fear still whispered at the edges of her mind because she knew one truth well. Peace never lasted. The knock on the door startled her. "B." Anne looked up expectantly. "Mommy, is it Dr. Carter?" Lisa hesitated, then opened the door. Landon stood there, dressed simply in jeans and a worn jacket. His eyes soft but shadowed by exhaustion. He held no flowers, no gifts, only himself. Lisa let him in silently. Ben leapt into his arms. "Daddy, Landon, you came back." Landon hugged him tightly, his voice thick. "I promised I would always come back, champ." Lisa watched them together, her throat tightening when Ben ran off to show a new drawing. Landon turned to her, his eyes searching Lisa. "It is time we tell him the truth." She stiffened. "He already knows you are his friend." Landon shook his head. "No, he deserves to know who I really am." Lisa lowered her gaze. She feared Ben's questions, feared the changes that truth would bring. But when Ben returned, clutching his paper covered in crayon hearts, she knew Landon was right. They sat together on the couch, Ben squeezed between them. Landon took a deep breath. "Champ, do you remember when you asked if I had kids?" Ben nodded, curious. "Well, the truth is I do. I have you. I am your dad." Ben blinked once, then again, his little mouth forming a perfect circle. "Really, my real dad?" Lisa nodded, tears blurring her vision. "Yes, sweetheart. Dr. Carter is your father." The boy stared at them, then burst into a grin that lit the room. "I knew it. That is why we look the same," my teacher said. "We have the same eyes." Ben threw himself into Landon's arms. "Daddy, Landon!" he shouted, testing the words. "Daddy, Landon, I like it." Landon hugged him fiercely, his tears falling freely. "I like it too." Champ Ben looked between them, his smile fading for the first time. "Are you going to live with us now? Families live together?" The question hit them both like a blow. Lisa opened her mouth, but no words came. Landon looked at her searching, then faced his son gently. "Families come in many shapes, Ben, but I promise I will be with you every day if your mom lets me." Ben turned to Lisa, his eyes wide with hope. "Mommy, please." Lisa's heart melted. She could not fight it anymore, she whispered. "Of course he can." Ben jumped up, spinning with joy, then stopped suddenly, his face serious. "You should get married then. Then we will be a normal family." Lisa and Landon exchanged a stunned look, the air thick with unspoken words. Later, after Ben had fallen asleep curled in his blanket, Lisa and Landon sat quietly in the kitchen, the hum of the fridge, the only sound. Landon reached across the table, his hand trembling. "Lisa, I lost 5 years. I will not lose another. I am not asking for part of your life. I am asking for all of it. Marry me." He opened a small box, the ring inside simple but honest. His eyes shone with fear and determination. Lisa covered her mouth, her heart racing. Landon whispered, "This is not a promise of perfection. It is a promise that this time I will stay." Before she could answer, a noise broke the moment Ben appeared at the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing?" Landon smiled. "Asking your mother to marry me." Ben's eyes widened. "Mommy, say yes, please." Lisa looked at them both, the two pieces of her heart, and for the first time in years the fear loosened its grip, tears streaming. She whispered, "Yes!" Ben cheered, throwing his arms around them, and in that moment Lisa knew the future would never be the same again. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, the kind of day that seemed too perfect to be real. Lisa woke to the sound of Ben bouncing on the bed, already dressed in his tiny suit, his hair slicked back with too much gel. "Mommy, today, you marry Daddy, Landon." Lisa laughed, pulling him into her arms, her heart racing with nerves and joy. They had chosen simplicity. A friend's family farm surrounded by fields of wildflowers. The ceremony would be small, only those who had stood by them through the storms. No reporters, no headlines, no grand decorations, just love raw and unpolished. When Lisa stepped out in her ivory lace dress, her mother gasped, tears shining in her eyes. "You have never looked so happy," Maria whispered. Lisa kissed her cheek. "Thank you, Mom, for never letting me give up." Landon arrived soon after, his navy suit perfectly pressed, but his hands betraying his nerves when he caught sight of Lisa. His breath hitched, he covered his eyes playfully like a nervous boy. "You said not to look at the bride," Ben scolded from the doorway. Landon peeked through his fingers, then dropped his hands completely. "Lisa, you are stunning." She smiled, smoothing his tie. "You are shaking, more than me." Guests gathered under a pergola draped in soft fabric. Ben walked proudly down the aisle, carrying the rings, his little steps steady with importance. "Daddy, I give Mommy to you, but you must promise to take care of her forever." Landon's voice trembled as he whispered,
I promise, champ.
When Lisa reached him, their hands locked like they had been waiting a lifetime for this. The officiant spoke of second chances, of forgiveness, of family, forged through storms, when it was time for vows. Landon's voice shook with emotion. Lisa, 6 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I left you. But you gave me another chance. You gave me a son, and today you are giving me your trust. I vow never to leave again. I vow to be the husband you deserve and the father Ben needs. Lisa's eyes shimmered with tears. Landon, when I saw you again in that hospital, I swore I would not let you close, but you proved me wrong. Day after day, you showed me you had changed. I promised to build this family with you on love and honesty and to never let fear drive us apart again. Ben delivered the rings. His smile so wide it lit the field when the officiant asked, "Do you take each other?" Both said, "I do," with voices firm and full of hope. The kiss was tender, sealing years of pain into a promise of forever. Ben rushed forward, wrapping them both in his little arms, shouting, "We are a real family now." The reception was simple. Laughter music, children running through the grass. Lisa and Landon danced slowly under strings of lights, their foreheads pressed together.
How do you feel,
"Mrs. Carter?" Landon whispered. Lisa smiled like, "I have finally come home." Later, when the last guests had gone and Ben slept in the back seat, still wearing his suit, Landon carried him inside their small apartment. Lisa watched her new husband tuck their son into bed, then take her hand. The world outside still carried shadows, Caroline's downfall, the whispers at the hospital, but inside this little home there was only peace. They sat together under the stars in their backyard. Landon kissed her hand softly. "Lisa, I once thought success meant everything, but now I know the truth. Success is this: you, me and Ben, our family." She leaned against him, her ring catching the starlight. "Our story is not ending tonight, Landon. It is only beginning." And for the first time since fate had thrown them back together, Lisa believed that beginnings born from broken pieces could be stronger than anything that had come before.